The video you're going to see next is the one that demonstrates how I use OBS to shift from one scene to the next. And you'll see that I'm still using kind of bad recording equipment, but nevertheless, that just goes to show that you can actually make a lot of progress with crappy equipment, and then you can just become better at the tool, and then later you can replace the equipment. So the two most important things that you have to remember from that video is the concept of scenes and the idea that you can record things to disk rather than stream. The nice thing with OBS Studio is that it gives you the opportunity to create much richer content than if you would only capture your slides or your camera on your laptop. So it lets you combine multiple sources into the same video at the end. So you'll end up with only one video file, but it can contain input from multiple sources, and I really like that. In many ways, it looks a bit like the control room analogy of a studio. So if a studio wants to make a recording, they will have multiple cameras, multiple angles, and in the control room, the director sits and chooses what the viewer, that would be you and me, would see at the end. And the same thing goes here. So once I have set up all these camera angles, so to speak, all these combinations, I can switch between them based on the manuscript of what I want to record. OBS Studio is free, which I really like, and you can download it here. You just go to obsproject.com, download, and then you download the right one for your platform. Once you have installed it, it will try to do some optimization and guesswork, but you could just skip that and get to the main screen. This is how OBS Studio looks when you have it running. The most important part to understand is the idea of scenes right here. When you have these scenes, how you can choose what the viewer will see. And you can have different combinations of them. And right now I'm kind of recording the display where you also have OBS Studio running. But I would normally move OBS Studio out of the way and have that on a separate display. I have set up multiple of these scenes, and you can see them right here. And I can then use keys I'll show you later to switch between them. So this one is the one with the main display that you can see right now. This one is the same with the top camera. So now you see you have the main display up in the corner, and then you have the camera right here. So I can either draw something or show what I'm doing on the keyboard. I also have both displays. So I show my main display, and this is the other one where you can see there's a small video because I'm recording this. And then I have a combination of all three, so both displays and the top camera, or only the top camera. I can have more of these combinations. For instance, I could have an additional camera that would capture my face. Some other scenes that I created, like this one, this is just a blank screen with absolutely nothing, and I only have that here because I wanted to create a separation between those screen and this scene, these scenes. So this one is called Waiting Lobby, and I'll use that one in case I have a stream that's live. I have started the stream, let's say 10 minutes before it's supposed to start, or when it's supposed to start. I start with this scene right here. That means that the people who then start the screen will see this, and I would play some music in the background as well, so you get some kind of waiting room feel about it. And then I can make sure that I'm ready. I got my microphone muted at that point. The viewers will only see this screen and hear some background music. And then I have another one. This is something that a student actually created for me. I said I needed an image for breaks, and this is in case either something is messed up or I just need to, I don't know, take a phone or something, and this will allow me to kind of go to a break. So I really feel like a movie director at this point, or actually more like a television producer, to be honest. Now we come to the part where you see why I've written F12, pause, F1, F2, and F5 here, and that is because I've associated hotkeys so that I don't have to move the mouse pointer over and press, because I would probably be too busy in my head, and then it's a bit of a distraction moving the mouse over to press these things. So I've connected these with my keyboard, and you can see here, if I just go to the top camera, you can see here that I have these paper And you can recognize a little bit if I add some shadow to it right here. The camera doesn't capture that. I have denominators for each of the F keys, and that would then correspond, if I go back to the main display, this would then correspond with the scenes that I have here. So I don't have to use the mouse, I can just use the different F keys, and you can see here that I'm kind of switching between the different scenes. The same goes for having a break, that's the pause button right here, and F12, that is this one. If I want to show you how I set up the keys, I went to settings, and then it has hotkeys here. And this may look a little bit daunting at first, but it's actually a quite simple setup. It shows you automatically the scenes here as a heading. This was this blank screen that I created. I'm sure that's this one. I'm not interested in that one. But here, F1, only main display, that would be this scene. And in order to switch to scene, I just pressed here. I can clear this one, just to show you here. I just pressed F1. There we go. And I press apply and OK, and now that is saved. So once you have the hotkeys in place, it should be really easy to switch between the scenes based on what you want to do. Alright, so there's one last thing as well. OBS Studio is mostly created for streaming, and that means creating some kind of live event, either on Microsoft Stream, YouTube, Twitch or whatnot, and then have kind of a live experience with the audience. But to be honest, that is not always the best thing. First of all, it's not always quiet around here. Also, I find the streaming setting to be quite unsettling because sometimes there's something wrong with my microphone or something is going on and there's the delay with all the questions. I just find that when I try to explain something that's really complicated, it's actually quite difficult to do that on a live stream. So I would say that the lecture is not always the best format for streams because of the amount of, let's say, planning and everything else. So what I'd like to do is record this instead, like as if it is a stream. I record it, I can then re-edit this video later, cut out all those bits, make the video more compressed, better for the viewer, add more bits and pieces as I want, and then I can upload that as homework. And this means that the teaching setting that was planned, that's scheduled, instead of using a stream for that with all of its challenges, if you're not very experienced, then watching the video becomes homework, and then I could rather be available on a chat or something instead. And that would be the typical flipped classroom approach, and this is normally how I go about things. If you remember, this button here is to start streaming, but this is in order to start recording. But before you do that, it's a good idea to just go through the settings and look at output. This is for streaming, that's fine. Recording here, you have several options. What I would set here is, instead of same as stream, you go on, let's say, high quality medium file size. And this will be a little bit easier on your computer, especially your hard drive, because while this is recording, it's just going to hammer stuff into your hard drive. So you might want to make that as easy for your computer as possible. The recording format I would leave at MKW and not do MP4 because it gives you lots of warnings. I'll show how you can then remux that later. And if you can do hardware encoding, that is obviously better than none. The other thing you should check out then is if you go to the stream settings, no, here, hold on, there was video, to look at the output resolution. And this also will determine a bit of how difficult this will be for your computer, in addition to the frame rate. I would leave this at 30 if I were you, but if this is at a high setting for you, if you go lower, then the video quality will be lower, but it will be less strain on your system. And it's not in all cases that you need this particular setting here, which maybe you recognize 720 would be what we would call HD. So that's a pretty high resolution. You may not need it. And this is the size of the canvas, which would be the size of this surface area here. So it determines basically how much room you can get. But you can imagine if you squeeze a lot of details in here, and then you scale that down to a much smaller size later, then even though you will see everything, it will be quite grainy and granular, and you may not, get the same quality that you want. The last thing I wanted to add is using two displays. Now, I have previously said that I have a display next to me. You could see it if you look at, no, both displays, this one. I have actually two monitors. This one is in portrait mode and it's next to the other one. So what I normally do is actually have this one over here, and you cannot see that because I'm kind of moving out of the area that I'm recording, but I then actually have this sitting down here so I can kind of pay attention to what I'm doing. I might have a chat window up here that enables me to keep track of any questions or whatever I do, and that is if I live stream. Now I could have this as kind of my main display where I record stuff, but I can have my manuscript here, or I can have a web page, or however I want to construct it. The next step is to plan the lecture that I want to give and then write that down as some kind of shorthand manuscript and then do the actual recording.